Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining MSA's live webinar, Relationships and MS, Love and Loss in the Time of Uncertainty with Dr. Kimberly Castelo. My name is Kate Durack, and I'm the Director of Communication and Patient Focus in the MSIN program for MSAA. I also live with MS, and I was diagnosed almost 10 years ago. I am absolutely honored to be your host for today's program. And I'm just going to run through a couple of things before we get started. In case this is the first time you're joining one of our programs, I'd like to share information about MSAA and review housekeeping items. MSAA is a national nonprofit organization dedicated to improving lives today through vital services and support for the MS community. Our initiatives are designed to advance educational, wellness, and supportive resources. Our free programs and services include a national helpline, equipment and cooling distribution program, educational programs, award-winning publications, shared management tools, a peer-to-peer online forum, and more. For more information about all of that, please visit our website at mymsaa.org. Additionally, I just wanted to mention that during tonight's program, you'll have the opportunity to submit your questions by using the Q&A chat box, and as time permits, questions will be addressed during the Q&A portion of tonight's webinar. Also, please know that this program is being recorded and will be available as an on-demand video on our MSAA video library in the next few weeks. At the end of the program, we ask that you please complete a brief survey, and your feedback is extremely important for this. It helps us develop future content and programs, and a link to the survey will be included in the chat box. And finally, as a friendly reminder, this program is for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute formal recommendations. Please speak with your care team for specific questions or concerns. And with that, welcome to our webinar. I am so glad that you're here this evening. We're exploring an aspect of MS that is deeply personal, but also often not talked about enough, and that's relationships. Whether it's with a partner, family member, friend, or caregiver, MS has a way of shifting the dynamic, and that change that MS brings can be hard, but it can also open a door to deeper communication, empathy, and growth. I am absolutely thrilled to be joined by Kimberly Castelo. She's a licensed therapist, and she also lives with MS. She brings a powerful combination of professional insight and lived experience to this conversation, and I know that you'll find what she shares today to be both practical and deeply validating. So welcome, Kimberly.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I think I'd like to get us started with just a really general question. So I'm going to start us off by asking you, how does MS affect relationships?
Yeah, great question. Where I want to start is that relationships in general are just hard, whether you have MS or not. Yeah. Relationships are just hard. Now you put MS in the mix, it gives a little bit of a different challenge, right? And so how relationships work developmentally, right? As we go through birth all the way till the end of time, right? Is that when anything comes in the relationship system and anything leaves the system kind of gets a little chaotic. So for example, if when your children get married, something's coming into the system. A passing of a pet or a loved one, something is leaving the system, or a divorce or a rupture in relationship. All of that kind of brings a little bit of chaos to the system. So when we get diagnosed with MS, that's something bringing something in, right? Something we weren't expecting. So it causes a little bit of chaos to our relationships, the way that we do life. As the disease progresses, some of us, it doesn't affect very much. Some of it affects a lot, right? So that loss can kind of shake up the system too. So it's hard. It makes relationships hard. There's grief, there's loss, there's all kinds of emotional changes. We're tired. Oh, we're tired, right? So tired. There's role shifts, At one time I was taking care of everybody, and now I have a spouse that sometimes has to take care of me, right? There's a role shift. Intimacy changes. So MS, you know, as it's come into the system kind of goes a little like, what is happening here? And there's some distress. So if you're feeling distress in your relationships, you're probably right where you need to be. Like the good thing is that we don't have to stay there. Right? There's hope for us.
Yeah. So with that in mind, like what do you suggest for communication tools that you found to be helpful to help work through that?
Yeah. So I have this really cute saying. It's a really cute saying, but it's a very powerful saying. Okay. And it says, what we can name, we can tame. And what we can tame, we can change. Okay. So I'm going to say it again. What we can name, we can tame. And what we can tame, we can change. So some of the communication tools is to really start to know how we interact with our relationship, in our system, with our friendships, with our partners, with our coworkers. We don't live in a bubble, right? So what I do will affect you, Kate, and what you do will affect me, right? So we've got to name that. I say this, and then Kate, you do this, and then you say this, and then I say something. And we kind of play off of each other. And sometimes those interactions are very positive, and sometimes they're not. Okay. So if we can name, hey, we kind of get in this cycle a little bit where I ask for something and then you kind of like disappear. Or you ask for something, Kate, and all of a sudden I disappear, right? We've got to name that dynamic. Okay. We need to name that dynamic. We need to name what it causes, which is disconnection or distress or loneliness or isolation. We've got to name it. Okay. So then how do you tame it? We work together on it. You work together with the person that you're with. Say, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to withdraw. I don't want to get louder. I don't want this disconnection anymore. I actually want connection. I want us to be okay. So that is the part of the taming, right? We're naming it and now we're saying, okay, let's work together. Because when you're in relationships, if you do healing work in isolation or just by yourself, it doesn't go very far.
Right.
But we need each other. We need each other. And so once we realize that we're not the enemy of each other, that actually the cycle that we get into is the enemy, right? We can begin to say, okay, so the enemy here is disconnection. The enemy is feeling overwhelmed. The enemy is MS. The enemy is depression. Then we can start to change and work together on how to make the changes where you and I'm using Kate as an example because she's here and it's easy, right? So that Kate and I, or whatever relationship I'm in, can flourish, right? So we've got to name the cycle that happens and then what it causes. Causes disconnection, causes loneliness, it causes stress. We've got to be able to tame that cycle by saying, hey, you know what? If we're against each other, we're not going to go anywhere. So let's get on the same page and let's fight the right enemy. Depression, loneliness. Okay. And then we work together on how do we make this happen? Where we both are seen and we both are loved and we both can express ourselves. Right? And so when we do that, when we start to communicate in that way, we can start talking about our fears. We can start talking about our joys. We can start talking about the impacts we have on each other. There's no threat then on setting boundaries, right? Because we're not fighting each other, right? We're joining together. We're able to kind of talk about how many spoons that we have for the day. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of like spoon theory, right? I have so many spoons in a day. And as I do each task, a spoon gets taken up. So then by the end of the day, I might only have one spoon left to engage my partner, right? And they need 5 spoons. I don't have that many spoons. I only have one spoon, right? So it's being able to talk about that, how much energy I have to engage my partner. And we can talk about our needs without criticism or contempt because we're not the enemy of each other, right? Something else is.
Okay, well, I definitely have a question in this because being able to do that is like a next level vulnerability in a space
Oh,
where you already, I mean, I'm going to speak for myself, where I already feel tremendous guilt that I have this thing that's going to be a burden to somebody else that I've brought into my life. Like, how do you reframe that in your brain and so that you can make positive changes in your relationship?
yeah. Well, that is a common question, right? That's a common question. And a lot of people probably on this webinar and those that watch after it are asking the same thing. And we've got to talk about it.
Uh-huh.
And we got to say, I'm afraid about being a burden. I don't want to be a burden.
But I need help.
And I need help.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need help. And so then though, it's about co-creating what it looks like to have help, right? Do we need to expand the definition of help? Is it just my partner that can help me? Is there more people that can help me? Who can I ask to join in to help me so it doesn't just land on my partner, right? And how can I also show up for my partner? I might not be able to like mow the lawn, but I can listen. I can empower. I can support. And so when I can say, hey, I want to be here for you in this way. You can mow the lawn and I want to support you this way. We can find ways that the relationship becomes more give and take, right? More give and take. But we have to talk overtly about, I feel like I'm burdened.
Uh-huh.
We have to. And we have to be able to hear our partner say, sometimes I do feel pressure and I do feel burdened. I do. I don't want to let you down. I don't want to let you down. And I feel burdened. That's hard to hear.
Yeah.
Oh,
Especially for something that you have zero control over.
we have no control over it, right? So this is where we really begin to open up ourselves and say, yeah, MS has kind of taken over here. And how can we not have that win?
Yeah. Well, that rolls into our next question. So, and and maybe this we can just play off of what you've just said, but um, relationships are hard. So even outside of that conversation, um, in general, just maintaining a relationship, it takes so much work. I mean, we all know that, and relationships are hard. And when you bring MS into the mix, like how are we supposed to cope in that? Like, what can we look for in creating a healthy caregiver dynamic or making sure that we're not isolating, that kind of thing?
Yeah, this is where we have to put outside a little bit what's going on in our world. So, for example, we have to expand the definition of what help looks like. I can't just go to my partner. MSAA is so great at providing support in so many ways. So we've got to utilize it,
Uh,
right? We've got to go to the groups that they offer. We've got to go to the webinars. We've got to, ask for the cooling vest,
right.
right? There are things here that we can kind of utilize. And so we have to expand our definition of who can help us.
Mhm.
And I got to tell you, sometimes that's vulnerable.
Sure is. Yeah.
right? It's a lot easier for me to go to my partner and ask for help than to go to a faith community, go seek a therapist, even call up MSAA.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. It's vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just face it, it's really unfair. It's really unfair that we've got this disease and then now we've got to do all this extra stuff. And maybe
With
not
energy
everybody.
that we don't have.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe nobody else feels that way, but sometimes I do.
Mhm.
It's like, this is just not fair.
Yeah.
Now I've got to think all of these ways of kind of showing up. And that's hard. And that's hard. So we've got to really expand our definition of what support is. And isolation is our biggest enemy, but it's the easiest one for us to fall into.
Okay.
It's so easy to fall into. So we've got to find people and be intentional of just picking up the phone and calling someone. We've got to.
Yeah, it goes a long way. I mean, I've called people, if I don't have anyone to go to treatment with me, I'll call my best friend in Colorado and she'll talk to me the whole time. There is something so comforting and powerful in that. And even though she's just on the phone and not there with me physically, I feel so much better in that moment. And she can make something that feels so daunting and like unnatural and weird just feel like part of my life and something that she's here for. And it's, equal to all of the things that I'm, supportive of her with. So yeah, I totally agree that just a simple phone call can change everything.
I mean, what a gift.
Yeah,
Your friend to you.
totally. Yeah.
What a gift. And
Mhm.
what a secure relationship. That's what I call that, right? A very
Mhm.
secure relationship where you can call to somebody when you need them, right? That's when you know you have a secure relationship. I can call to you and I know that you're going to be there with me. Not all the time, not perfect, right? Because we are human, but like 80% of the time, I can call you and you're going to be there for me.
Okay.
That's a really secure relationship.
Yeah.
And to get there takes time and it takes risk.
So what do you say to, and this came up in the chat, so I'm going to bring that up. Thank you for whoever was participating with that. What do you say to somebody who just does not want to ask for help, does not want to engage? They just feel like a burden and it's really hard to pull out of that. Like, what's step number one?
Step number one. Oh, good question. Step number one. Step number one is that you've got to talk to your neurologist and rule out depression and things like that to make sure
Mm.
you're getting the proper medication. Because if you're fighting against depression and a chemical imbalance, it's really hard. It's going to be hard to fight against that narrative. So I'm all about like, give me some antidepressants or do whatever to help me to get out of
Mhm.
that thing, right? So that would be my number one. My number two is to start small. And maybe small is to talk to a therapist,
Uh-huh. Which can also feel big, to be fair.
which could be which could be big,
Yeah.
or journal
Yes.
or journal. Because there's something that in some way, whether it's our family of origin, whether it's culture, whether it's society that has said that if we have MS, somehow we're a burden.
Mhm.
Or if we have limited mobility, somehow we're a burden. We've been taught this. And a lot of times our relationships reinforce that, right? So it's also about this inner work of finding our worth and believing that we're worth to feel love,
Mhm.
to feel safe, to feel as strong as we can, and to have relationships that support that. So if talking to, see, here I'm like, you could talk to a therapist because I'm a therapist. I'm like, oh, that's easy. And you're like, oh, that actually can be hard. So if that's hard, then you start to journal, right? Find the little space where there's some movement that you can kind of put yourself out there, but not isolate. Step one is we want to check with medication, which is because it's hard to get out of it.
It is. Yes. Um, okay, I'm going to switch gears. So, you know, oftentimes when you're diagnosed with MS, especially considering the age at which people are being diagnosed with MS, you've got like a 25-year-old woman with her life ahead of her, and she's trying to navigate a new relationship. How do you do that? Like, what does disclosure look like? How do you make sure that your self-worth is equal to what it would have been, without the diagnosis? And then how do you feel comfortable in the vulnerability of sharing what it is that you want to share with a new partner?
Woo,
Sorry.
woo. That's hard, right?
Yeah.
Talk about a can of worms,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is legit hard. This is hard. The bottom line is that who gets to sit at my table to get to know Kim Costello? I mean, I'm pretty cool, right?
Yes, you are.
Who gets to sit at my table and get to know that I have MS? And how do I know that they're safe to hold that information about me? For other people, it will look different. For me, it is that they're going to actually listen and not just make it about themselves. They're not going to try to fix me. They're the kind of people that are, think outside the box. And so I'm going to kind of check that. Are you the kind of person that can sit at my table that's worthy of knowing my story?
So how do you do that? I mean, is that something that you're like thinking about as you're first interacting with somebody?
Oh, yes, 100%. 100%. Hello, how are you? And I am all of a sudden wondering, how are you worthy to sit at my table? And how do I know that?
Mm-hmm.
And then if I feel like I want to risk that, like you mean something and I'm seeing some things, then I'm gonna share. And sometimes I could be wrong and they weren't worthy to sit at my table, right?
Right.
So I've got to grieve that.
Okay.
I've got to grieve that.
And sometimes that realization can happen very far down the road, and then it becomes very complicated. So it's not just at the outset of a relationship.
No, I mean, this could be like I am with somebody for a long period of time. We're thinking about getting married, or we're thinking about moving in together, or we're just really committed. And then all of a sudden, our partner's out.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, what just happened?
Uh-huh.
I thought that no matter what, you wouldn't go anywhere. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's hard.
it is hard.
Grief. There's grief. And if we took MS out of it, that's any relationship, right? There's any relationship where somebody can wake up and look at their partner and say, I'm out. I didn't sign up for this. But it's really hard when you have MS and it's something that you didn't ask for. And then all of a sudden, your partner who knows you've had MS and says that they're going to be there all of a sudden leaves. It's like, wait, you knew this about me and we had a plan. And so you've got to make space for grief. And that's hard.
Uh-huh.
I don't want to grieve. I don't want to grieve
Yeah.
in that way. It's hard. It hurts. And that's again where we have to go to our people who are in our circle to help us. And I'm always talking about expanding our definition of support. Always. If it's just, one or two people, it's too little.
Yeah.
We've got to expand it. And it's hard. I just moved across the country. I don't have a lot of people here. So it's
Yeah.
like, where's my support system?
Uh-huh.
I have to find it.
I'm in the same boat right now. I hear you.
That's hard.
It's hard.
And it's like, well, where do I find them? At the Bojangles? I'm like, I don't know where to find them. Right. So then I got to get creative and I got to start reaching out to my neurologist and I got to start, joining a club and I've got to, call my friend,
Uh-huh.
you know, but I got to get creative. And I got to tell you, when you don't have a lot of spoons,
It's hard to get creative.
it's hard to get creative.
Yeah.
It's hard to,
So I think a thing that's been helping me in that, developing new relationships, friendships, things like that, is just honing in on where I find my self-worth, like where I really feel like I thrive. So I am an artist, as well as my role in MSAA. And so I dive into the artist community here and then just look around and see like, oh, that might be a good friendship to have. But I'm trying to like focus in on where do I feel like I actually can collect spoons, which can happen out in the world too if you put yourself out there, and at the same time find people that might be, um, right up my alley to start a friendship with or a relationship in general.
yeah, I love that. You're like, okay, so I love art. Art is life-giving to me.
Uh-huh.
It gives me spoons.
Uh-huh.
So I'm going to put myself out there because that's a place that I feel safe, right? And then I'm going to see, and even though you didn't say it, this is what you do. You're like, I'm going to see who can sit at my table.
Yes.
I want to be picky about that because, I'm pretty cool. And to sit at my table, you got to be pretty special.
Yeah.
Even though you didn't say that, that's what was implied, right?
That's totally right. Yeah. And I mean, I think since I was diagnosed, I've always been super forthcoming with my diagnosis. I mean, granted, with the position that I'm in now with MSA, it's pretty obvious, that I'm also living with MS and I do a lot of writing about it and things like that. So it's not hard for anyone to figure that out. But just in general interactions with people, I do share that pretty quickly. And I know that that's not for everyone. I totally get that. I'm not encouraging that if that's not comfortable for you. But the reason that I do it is because I also want to normalize it as part of my life. Like it's not this big scary thing that is in control of everything. It's not going to define my relationship with you. It just is part of me. And I would like to educate you about it because number one, I think it's important to be educated on it in general. But number two, if we end up developing a relationship, I can then start educating you on little things that might come up that MS might just shift our dynamic a little bit and what that looks like. And I just like to get that conversation going as quickly as possible. So that
Yeah.
might scare people.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, it took me years before I was open with my MS diagnosis. I have been living with MS for 19 years. I did not want anybody to know.
Mm.
I didn't want anybody to know. And partially that was because of my own grief. I didn't want to acknowledge it. And so if I shared with somebody and then they went and told somebody else, I was mad
Yeah.
because I was like, that's my story. Why are you telling my story? Don't tell my story.
So it takes power away from you in a position where you don't even have power anyway because you're living with MS and you have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah. And so it took me quite a bit
Yeah.
before I was like, okay, I'm, and it was my grief.
Mhm.
It was my grief. I was in denial. I, went through all the things of like they mixed up somebody's MRI,
Oh,
all of the things.
yeah.
I'm too young for this. Just had a child. This isn't fair. Um, and so where you felt like I'm going to make a difference here, I was like, I don't care if I make a difference. I just don't want to have it. So it took me a long time of grieving. before I could pick my head up and say, okay, let's thrive with this thing.
Yeah. There is, once you get there, there is so much power in that. It really is.
It really, it is really powerful to go from like hiding and in isolation and then to a place where you're like, bring it.
Mm-hmm.
Come on.
Yeah.
Um, it's very empowering. And it's okay if you're not there yet.
100%. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Takes time sometimes.
Sure does. Um, and I think that it's important to think about the grieving process. I mean, I'd love for you to speak about this. It's just, you might think you're over it. And then for me, I'm in this cycle every year. So every 6 months, I'm grieving again because
Yeah.
I'm like, oh crap, this is real. I have to go do the thing because I have MS. It just hits me like, even though I'm in this business, I talk about it every day. I'm thinking about it all the time. Personally, it hits me hard before I
Yeah.
have to do treatment.
Yeah. Well, and honesty here, I had a serious talk with my neurologist because I was skipping, shots because I just didn't want to admit it. It
Mm,
was hard to give shots. So now I'm on a different medication. So to work with that, so I only have to do it twice a year
right.
instead of every other week. Right. So there is something about living with this, even though like I talk about it, I'm fine sharing it now, but just the idea of taking injections,
Hmm.
going to the hospital and getting an infusion,
Uh-huh.
it just reminds you that we live with this thing,
Yeah.
with MS. And it's okay to feel all kinds of feelings about it.
Yeah.
So grief can come in waves and it can surprise us and it can show up in different ways. What's empowering though is to go, huh, here you are. I wonder what you're trying to tell me, right? If I'm fighting taking my medication, what is that telling me? And what do I need to kind of work on so I can get to a place where I'm okay with taking my medication? What it meant for me is that I changed my treatment, right? So I could live and um, not have to think about it as often,
Mm, right.
right? And
Same.
so, what ways can we empower ourselves? And what is grief trying to tell us?
Hmm.
And can we sit with it? And can we talk about it? Because what you can name, you can tame. And what you can tame, you can change. But if we don't know what we're feeling and what's the thing that we need to tame, it's just going to continue.
Uh-huh.
So I got to say, okay, so I'm having grief or I'm depressed or I'm sad. Okay, now I've named that. Now what do I do about it? Okay, I talk to my support system, right? What do I
Mhm.
change about it? Okay, I change the way that I take my medication. And it's
Yeah.
something that works for me, that empowers me.
Uh-huh.
And that's just one scenario. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just being honest, circling back around to the relationship aspect of that, just being honest with how that cycle works for you and how you experience, probably your year with MS, because it probably all of us have some kind of cycle that's happening. Um, and making sure that you have a good understanding of how you react at every step, and then sharing that with a partner so that they know that that's, what's going to happen throughout the year. Yeah, I feel like that is a huge benefit.
Yeah. And then you can be like, hey, I just want you to know my infusion's coming up and I get a little sad.
Yep.
You to know it's nothing that you've done. You don't have to fix me.
Uh-huh.
It's okay. I'll get over it once it's done.
Yep.
These are the tools I'm going to use. I'm going to call my friend. I'm going to, read a good book and I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
But just know, honey, that I'm going to struggle this week.
Right.
Then you're fighting together, right? You're
Mhm.
not enemies against it.
Uh-huh.
You know, you're not enemies against each other. You're fighting the correct thing,
Yeah.
which
I
is
love
depression or, grief or cycling or whatever you want to call it.
that. Uh-huh. Yeah, I love that. Um, okay, so let's move forward in a relationship. Something doesn't work out, um, and the relationship ends. As a person living with MS, what can we do to navigate the end of a relationship, other than getting a drastic haircut or a new tattoo?
I'm all for that, by the way. I just think options, I don't understand. Like, that's a great option.
For
Um,
coping.
yeah, for coping. Yeah. Um, so, and I feel like this whole thing is about grief, and that kind of stinks, but it's true. Because a lot of things when a relationship ends, there's several waves that we go through. First of all, we blame the other person, right? So there could be anger. Um, but often I find people with MS tend to turn it to themselves.
Mm,
That somehow they've done something wrong. They were too much. They were too needy. And so all of those intrusive thoughts come really, really in. So you've got to grieve, but you also got to kind of reclaim, like, hey, hold on just a second. It's not all my fault. Maybe some things are, but it's not all my fault.
uh-huh.
Right. And so I really recommend journaling about it and really being mindful of our self talk.
Mm,
What do we say to ourselves? Our mind is pretty powerful.
that's a hard one.
Oh man, right?
Yeah.
That's self talk. Like, how many times do we praise ourselves throughout the day? I bet
Mhm.
it is less than how many times we criticize ourselves.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. So we just gave power to criticism,
Mhm.
doubt, and instead of empowering ourselves.
Mm,
So we got to reclaim that. That doesn't mean that we don't grieve it. That doesn't mean we don't say, okay, what do I need to learn from it? And what parts of me that I need to change to have a successful relationship? But if you're owning the whole thing, if it's all about, how an awful person you are
mm,
and how it would be different if you didn't have MS and the guilt and shame that comes from there, and we've got to work on those internal dialogues.
yeah.
We just do. It does not empower us. It does not help us.
Yeah. So let me ask you, um, how do you, I mean, I think that my background, and just the way that my brain processes things, it's really easy for me to fall into negative self-talk. I'm very hard on myself.
Most people
So
are.
so how do you, I mean, is the first step just recognizing that you're doing it?
Oh, you just named it.
Okay.
Yeah, you just named it.
All right.
Okay. And then to tame it, you've got to be like, I wonder if there's another story here.
Mm,
Now, I got to tell you, doing this is actually really difficult.
yeah.
It's like, what could be another story? Be like, I don't know. I don't know the other story. Everything just stinks. I don't get it.
Yeah.
It's really hard to
Mm-hmm.
think about something else. So you just stay there until it comes.
Mm, that's uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable and sometimes it takes a long time,
Yeah.
right? And so, but that's the part of taming it, right? There's another truth there, right? Like, I know you're saying this about yourself, but there's another story here.
Mm,
What's that story that's
yeah.
demeaning to you? And once you finally get that, Then when those negative thoughts come in, you can go, wait a minute, hey, this is the change. Actually, I'm going to believe this about myself.
I recently had a relationship shift, and I actually just wrote a blog post about this, but I ended up talking to my mom, and inadvertently, she did an inventory with me of like, Kate, these are all of the things that you've got going. Like, you need to focus on all of these things that you are and that you do and that are positive in the world. And I think that it's just really easy for me, and I'm sure lots of people to become blind to those things. And then you hyper focus on the problems, and then the negative self talk starts. Um, and it was just so enlightening for somebody else to say, wait a second, what are you doing? These are the things that are actually going on in your life. These are the things that you're good at. These are the things that make you who you are. Um, and since she did that, it's actually helped me in my internal monologue to think like, wait a second, I need to do my inventory. I can't hyper focus on the negative because there are positive things. We've just learned them, you know?
Yes.
It's been really helpful. So I would encourage people to definitely do that.
And so that shows that you have a really secure relationship with your mom,
Mhm.
right? Let's say I don't have it,
Yeah.
other person. So it's about developing a secure inward self. And this is really hard. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I think for my whole life, I'm going to work on how to have a secure self with me, you know? And so what that means is that if you don't have a person to tell you how awesome you are, you're worthy to be your own cheerleader.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
That doesn't mean we don't need to change. That doesn't mean that that we don't make mistakes. But we've got to start by saying, okay, I'm saying this to myself. Is there another story that's positive?
Mhm.
Let's name it, then let's tame it, and let's change it by saying, actually, I think I'm gonna choose this one today. I'm gonna choose this positive story. This is the one that empowers me.
I love that. We're getting down to the last 15 minutes, so I'm going to switch gears here. We've talked a lot about struggles, um, and we've talked a lot about grief. So if we can switch gears for the last few minutes and focus on what you suggest for building strong relationships with people, um, and gear more towards the positive, I think that would be a nice way to close this out.
Yeah, you know what? MS has really taught me a lot. It's taught me how to grieve and all the things, but it's also taught me to live in the moment.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It's also taught me to really value the things around me.
Uh-huh.
Also taught me to value my body in ways that I would never have in the past. So I'm really intentional with my relationships,
Mm-hmm.
people that matter to me. And so that's how you build, you know, I only have 2 spoons today, Kate, and I'm going to spend them this way. And they're going to be in a relationship, and I'm going to give my all, those 2 spoons in that relationship. That's what that looks like,
Mm-hmm.
right? To dedicate some of your energy, your spoons, to love and to be loved. Both.
Because it does take energy to open yourself up for it too. Absolutely.
Yeah. To give love and to receive love,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So there's something really beautiful about saying, okay, this moment right here, I'm going to spend and I'm fully going to be with the person in front of me. And I'm going to put my all into it. And I'm going to love deeply and I'm going to receive love deeply. And I'm going to use my spoons for that.
Yeah. That's great. And that goes across the board. I mean, I would like to do more of that when I'm just hanging out with friends sometimes and really be intentional about it.
Yeah. And sometimes I like to do this with myself. And I was like,
Mm.
I'm getting a massage today just because I'm doing it. and I'm going to enjoy that
Mhm.
whole 60 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm going to really think about how I'm loving on myself today.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
I think at this point, I'm going to go through um, and check to see what questions we had to come in. Let me see here. All right. Oh, interesting. Can you talk to those in the room who may be the ones in a relationship with someone living with MS?
Oh, yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do a lot of talking about people who are the ones that are caring for us, the ones with MS. And the big thing is a couple of things. Number one, you've got to take care of yourself.
Mm,
You've got to take care of yourself. Your needs matter too. You've got to take care of yourself. Secondly, you don't have to do it all. You do not have to do it all. If you feel like you're having to do it all, then you need to have a conversation because you do not have to do it all. Okay. Third, allow the person with MS to care for you.
yes.
Know how or what that looks like, but don't always go into the caregiver role. To be allow them to care for you and to slow down and actually allow that to sink in. If we don't do that, we'll burn out.
Yeah.
We'll burn out. So we don't want our partners to burn out, right? So our partners have to take care of themselves, not do it all, and then let us take care of them. And not just have us do the things and not be mindful of it, but slow down and go, oh wow, they really listened to me today, or they made my lunch today. They used their last spoon to give me a back massage. They like really slow down and see the moments that people were trying to take care of you.
That's great relationship advice for literally anyone. That's,
It's forever because we get so in a rut that
yeah.
we just do things and we don't kind of slow down and go, huh, they were taking care of me right then.
Hmm.
Or huh, I was just taking care of somebody else.
Yeah.
There's a lot of benefit to slowing us ourselves down and being present in the moment and allowing us to feel the blessing of being taken care of and to care for someone else.
Yeah. Absolutely. This is going to open such a can of worms, Kimberly, and I hope that you and I get to have many more conversations about all of these things and tease them out a bit more. But we did have a few questions come in about intimacy and how to approach it for the first time and how to approach challenges that might come up in intimacy as a relationship progresses.
Yeah, I love that you did that. And one of the things I did not put in my profile, but I will say here is that I'm actually a certified sex therapist. So I'm glad that we're talking about this. So, um, repeat the two questions again so I make sure that I get it.
So, how to approach intimacy at the start of a relationship, maybe in terms of how to talk to a new partner about it, and then how to navigate potential issues that might come up once you're in a partnership, like changes to intimacy.
Yeah. What's beautiful about this is that everybody has to have the same conversation, regardless of if you have MS or not. Like, if you're going to start having a sexual relationship, you've got to kind of talk about what it's going to look like.
Mhm.
You know, how many partners have you had? Do you have any STIs? Oh, and this is the way that I like to be touched. I actually don't like to be touched like this. Which ways do you like to be touched? This is a big no for me. Or, yeah, this is a yes for me. We don't actually have those kinds of conversations, and movies don't help us. It's all like they're just having like passionate sex on the kitchen table or something. That's not how it works. Like, To have great sex, we've got to communicate and we've got to talk about our likes and our dislikes
Mm.
and what our bodies can do and what our bodies can't do and what feels good and what doesn't feel good. And that's before sexual encounter, that's during a sexual encounter, and that's after a sexual encounter.
Mm.
So I'm going to be talking about what I want and what I don't want. Then during, I'm going to say, this feels good, this doesn't feel good. And I'm going to direct. And I'm also going to listen to my partner as they direct. And the third one, we're going to talk about, how was this? Did you feel safe? Did you feel good? Did you feel okay? You've got to do all of that. Now, sexuality, for the second question, sexuality changes all the time. Our bodies change all the time. We get heavier, we get thinner, we get sick, we don't get sick. We have erectile dysfunction, we have vaginal dryness. Things change at all times. Yeah. When you have a secure relationship and you can talk about it, those things are like blips. They're just like little blips.
Mm.
Okay. If there's a lot of anxiety in the relationship, they become really big. Because then we begin to kind of talk about, we begin to look at ourselves as like, are we good lovers? Are we wanted? Are we desirous? And we begin all that shame cycle, right? So it is a huge can of worms, Kate.
Mhm.
Something that we have to do like six or more talk
Easily.
on.
Okay.
But again, we've got to talk about it. And if in a new relationship and you're wanting to be sexually active, you've got to talk about what you want before, during, and after.
Mm.
Hear what they want. Okay. If you're in a relationship and things are changing, if it's causing a lot of distress, it's going to tell you that there's probably some anxiety in the relationship. Right. And what are you telling yourself about that? Because we all go through blips, all of us, where bodies change, things happen. So I just want to normalize that.
Yeah.
And also say, depending on where we are and how safe we feel, will be on how big these little blips, these normal blips, what it does to us.
Mhm. I'm gonna sneak in one more question.
Yeah.
Um, and I thought this was really interesting. So we're gonna go back to new relationships. Um, what does this look like in terms of navigating new relationships? Maybe you're going out, you're on a dating app and you go out on a first date with somebody and you use a mobility aid. Like how does the physical reminder of living with MS, if you're someone who needs a mobility aid, how does that come into play when navigating relationships?
Yeah. I mean, you can say, straight off the bat, I use mobility aid.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to be an issue?
Mm-hmm.
And then using your voice in the relationship, because a lot of times, I'm using mobility aid, and let's say like I drop a cane and then somebody just picks it up for me when I could have picked it up for myself, right?
Uh-huh.
And I
Yeah.
actually didn't need that support. So it's like talking about it like we're talking about this blue pen. You know, I have, I use an aid. You're going to notice that. And if it falls or does anything, I'll ask if I need help, but please don't treat me any differently. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
or I'm using this aid, and so what that means is that we might have to ask for special seating. Is that an issue for you? Blue pen, just like a blue pen. You
Yeah.
ask that, and there's no need to apologize for it. Let us take up some space.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That's super powerful. We have 4 minutes left. Is there anything that you want to touch on that we did not get a chance to talk about?
Well, I'm just so glad that we're here and we're doing this. I just
Me
have
too.
a feeling like we've just talked for an hour, but we could have talked for like 12.
Easily
Yeah.
12 days.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's just so much here. And so I guess I just want to tell people like, there's a lot of information here and it can feel very, very overwhelming, right? It's
Yeah.
just a lot of questions, a lot of this. So take your time. I think this will be up somewhere again, so you can listen to it again if you
It
want.
will be recorded. Yeah, it'll be on our website.
Yeah. So that you could take your time and kind of think about what this means for you, right? And what doesn't mean for you,
Yeah,
right? What applies to you and what doesn't. Um, and then and I really encourage everyone who's here, don't live in isolation. Don't live in isolation. We thrive in community. We thrive in safe, healthy, relational community where we feel seen and loved and understood. Um, so my hope is that we risk a little because we're worth it. We're worth having that kind of love and receiving it and giving it.
I love that. This has been so helpful. And I think, we're really just, um, we're really just talking like very surface level about all of these things, but you've given us some tools to use, especially when looking inward and um, allowing ourselves to take the time to feel the grief and figure out what it is that we can change by naming it. I love this so much, Kimberly, and I really hope that this turns into something more long term for us, that we can keep having these conversations and talk in much, much more detail. Um, personally, I think it's just so great to think that my diagnosis and what I go through um, does not mean that I don't deserve or cannot have the exact same kind of relationships, if not better relationships, than I would have without the MS diagnosis.
A
Um,
100%.
yeah,
100%.
yeah. I think, honestly, as a matter of fact, I feel like in a lot of ways I have better relationships after the diagnosis because I can just frame things a little bit differently in my mind. So I'd love to dig into that more with you as well, but we do not have time for that tonight.
We don't have time. And so I want people to sit with grief and all of the things, but I also want us to slow down. This is an invitation for us all. Slow down and to catch the gifts
Yes.
because we go through life. It's so fast. It's really sometimes hard to see how somebody shows up for us, or they do it all the time. So, we just take it for granted. Um, but when people show up for you, it's because you matter.
Uh-huh.
And when you show up for somebody else, it's because they matter.
Yeah.
So the invitation is just slow down, notice, and let those good feelings settle.
I love that. What a nice way to end. Thank you so much, Kimberly. I look forward to our next conversation. And this concludes our webinar. And on behalf of MSAA, I want to thank you for your time and participation. As a reminder, this was recorded and it'll be archived on our website. Please take a few minutes to complete the brief survey when the webinar ends. We would love your feedback. There is a section in there about how we could potentially expand this topic, what you'd like to hear about. So please, we'd just love to hear from you. Thank you again, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.